And should we hum the Star Wars theme, or are we going to get hit with copyright by Warner?
Oh, this is YouTube, right? Yeah, you don't even want to burp the Star Wars theme or anything.
Is that weird enough?
It's you know what? That's kind of like the Star Wars theme on The Simpsons, the Space Wars theme or whatever that is. Yeah, it's just close enough.
I did a video that's going to be a Patreon exclusive, and I sang the Fall Guy theme. Now, talk about obscure, the unknown stuntman. So I sang along with Lee Majors, and it got hit. Yep, copyright infringement, which is fine. They didn't take the video down. They just said we're going to be monetizing it. I'm like, that's fine, but geez, it's getting to be so that you can't even do a duet with Lee Majors anymore.
What's the world coming to?
I want to introduce our guest here for the folks watching. Chris, thanks for tuning in. Gilster, good to see you. These are all Patreon tribe members, which you are as well. So, brother, thank you so much for supporting on Patreon. Mark, how you doing? Can you get that Hicks off to you very soon? Oh, it's a very pretty card, except for the little sticker in the top corner. Matthew, how you doing? My guest needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway because I like saying his name, Jason Swank. That's how I picture Vince McMahon saying your name, Jason Swank.
Oh man, just the idea of Vince screaming your name through that microphone in the middle of the ring there, like in Mania 3. Remember when he would? He's just the Mr. Aretha Franklin.
You can see blood vessel. Right. Now that everything's in HD, you can actually see it pop. But I can see Vince standing up one day and saying, "The Attitude Era is over. It's time for the Swank Era." Whatever that means.
Whatever that is.
But folks, if you don't know this gentleman, he is from Rebel Force Radio. Previously, can we say the name of the previous show?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, from the Force Cast going back
to
2007, 2006,
it was
2007.
The first podcast I've ever listened to, honestly. Like back when I was a newbie to all this podcast, internet stuff, I was listening to the Force Cast a lot, and it got me through a lot of work days and driving. And I've just been a huge fan of you and Jimmy Mack for many, many years. So it was so amazing to get a message from you one day. I believe I have messaged you guys on your Facebook page in the past, just about Star Wars stuff, or posted on the page. Yeah, and that's.
Boy, if I'd have known it was you, I'd have paid more attention.
Well, that was before I got all this stuff.
Right, yeah.
But and to get a message out of the blue from you saying, "Hey, I dig your stuff," I'm like, it was a little bit of mutual admiration society. No, I dig your stuff.
Right.
I've been digging your stuff longer than you've been digging my stuff.
Well, it was when I discovered your channel, it was kind of like, and you probably get this a lot from people, but it was sort of like, wow, all of my favorite things being talked about by one guy. Oh, and he also happens to be exceptionally nice, very positive, so positive, almost spiritual in a way. Oh. And so it was awesome. I'm always excited when I see, that you've got new content up. And I used to, like, I'll be honest, everyone else would be like, oh, Centurions. And I was never really into Centurions, but I've learned now to just watch it anyway, because if I wasn't into it, you have a very infectious way of, talking so nostalgically and lovingly about things that I'm like, yeah, maybe I should get into Centurions,
The cartoon, there's not much substance there. Even the toys aren't that posable, but just the toys were pretty cool. Way before their time. With the size and the intricacy and the swapping parts and stuff. But like, I'm not passionate about every obscure 80s and 90s toy line. There's stuff that I'll try and I'm like, this ain't for me. This, I'll even hope this doesn't hurt too many feelings. Captain Power, I like it. I wish I loved it. I tried to watch the show and I was like, didn't really like it much as a kid. Don't really like it much as an adult. It's here because I call it garnish. It's not really, the collection isn't complete without Captain Power, because I remember going to Toys R Us and beside the Silverhawks and Brave Star was Captain Power. And it wasn't until I started adding some garnish to the collection, Wheeled Warriors, something I never really collected, stuff like that, that I went, wow, the good stuff isn't really complete without the garnish. It's just like on the G.I. Joe team. It's not really a complete team without
Big Boa.
Big Boa. I was going to say Tripwire, like the second stringers, right? You need those second stringers. You need the jobbers for the wrestling fans. Mark's
Absolutely.
out there. Mark's a big wrestling fan. You need
you need Steve Lombardi. You know, you need who was the guy that always patted himself on the back? Barry Horowitz.
The winner Horowitz. He was in an indie fed. It might have been actually Global Wrestling Federation in Texas, where I think he was in between WWF gigs, and he had this gimmick of the winner. That was his nickname, the winner, really? Barry Horowitz. And I think his gimmick was he finally won one, and he just went around going, "I'm the winner. No one can beat me." So I mean, that's
I like that he had the self-awareness. You know, that he realized, of course.
He was awesome. And Steve Austin always gives them their due. He calls them the carpenters job, the carpenters who build the house. I mean, you don't get Sid Vicious or Sid Justice looking like a monster unless a jobber or an enhancement guy allows himself to be spun around like a propeller through the air.
That's exactly right. It's like, you know, it's sort of like the old adage about Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. You know, well, she did everything Fred did, but backwards and in high heels. Helped make him look great.
Exactly. I see all the comments flying by here, guys. Thanks so much for dropping comments here. The Brooklyn Brawler, Nerd Miss Day Lewis, how you doing? Who are some of your favorite jobbers? They were like, I'll always call them jobbers. There's no offense intended. People who get all up in arms, I guess, try going back in time, and actually, because it was a different time. So jump in a DeLorean, go back in time. It was not offensive. Just like there's some other terms which we won't get into that, you know, are offensive now and weren't. But I love the enhancement guys, especially guys like Outback Jack, who maybe didn't really start as enhancement talent, but
there were always those guys that they, you know, would, like Vince was taking a chance, or, you know, hoping that they might get over, or maybe realize they weren't going to get over, but you needed them anyway. Outback is a good example.
I'm looking for the next Hulk Hogan. He's going to be Coco Beware.
Right. Well, what's not to love? He's got tails. He's got a bird.
He could sing.
Star power. Sing. Yeah, he could sing great. You know, and I think he might have been maybe more of like the next generation. They thought maybe he'd be like the Junkyard Dog, you know, because he had the animal theme, you know, and he could sing. You know, JYD, grab them cakes. Come on.
Always call JYD one of my favorite wrestlers. He got me into wrestling. I fell in love with it as soon as I saw him jump up on the ring, grab that rope, and start doing that dance, and then with all the kids. But the thing was, like, he was fun, but he was tough. He had the chain, which was an equalizer. Same with Coco Beware. There's a match on YouTube of Coco Beware. I think it was in Memphis before he went to WWF, and some enhancement guy tried him. He was, you know, not selling enough. He wasn't really cooperating. He was trying to get his own stuff over. Coco Beware destroyed this poor guy. He just legally mugged him. And you could tell these weren't working kicks and punches. These were like, you owe me money or something. Yeah, he just obliterated this poor guy. So he's a hard man. You don't want to. He's very fun and jumpy, but you don't want to try Coco Beware.
Well, you know, some of these stories that these guys will tell, and oftentimes it involves someone that you never would expect being just a complete and total badass. You know, I have heard legendary stories about Haku being one of the toughest people, and Harley Race, another one. You know. By the time I was into wrestling in the early to mid 80s, I mean, 83, 84 is when I really became aware of it. You know, right around the time of the Rock and Wrestling Connection with Cyndi Lauper and Goonies came out in 85, and they had the music video. And Harley Race was, you know, an old man. Yeah. He looked, to me, he was an old man.
Yeah. He wasn't really in the best shape, although in his prime, he wasn't in the best shape either.
Right. But that doesn't always mean, you know, Alaka. I just saw a photo of Freddie Blassie today. Someone had posted on. I love to follow all the like classic '80s wrestling handles on Instagram, and it was a shot of classy Freddie Blassie. Still had the white hair, had a the older face, but the guy was completely ripped. It was unbelievable. It was like one of those weird ads for like male enhancement or something. The old face with the young body.
Those older wrestlers, they can be a real inspiration. You don't always have to, really fall out of shape when you get older. I remember Terry Funk in his WWF run in the mid '80s was starting to gain a little bit of weight, getting a little heavy, and then he came back in '89. I've been going through WCW 1989. Great year for WCW, but he came back to challenge Flair for the belt, and he had a six-pack, I think, for the first time in his life, and he was 50. So that's inspiring to get a six-pack for the first time in your life at 50. I remember Piper when he came back to wrestle Jerry Lawler. I think he was 40 at that point. Six-pack, first time in his life. So maybe I'll give it another 10 or 20 years, but six-pack.
There's still hope for us, Michael. There's still hope.
It's never too late.
No, indeed. Yeah, I've really had a good time on the WWE app lately.
Pencil neck geek.
Just watching, it's so fun to go back and watch even some of the.
By the way, sorry.
Oh, he wasn't calling me that.
No, pencil neck geek is a Freddie Blassie. I think he invented that insult. Yeah, pencil neck geek.
And that became sort of pop culture. It transcended wrestling. But just looking at watching some of those old Saturday morning and Sunday morning shows like Superstars and Wrestling Challenge. And it was, the kids today, right? They have no idea. That's all we watched for an hour were jobbers in one main event, where it was two superstars going off. And then, I thought that's what wrestling was.
That's, I've always seen wrestling as kind of like you can learn a lot about life through wrestling, as simple as it seems and as repetitive as it seems. I think there's a lot more psychology to it than a hockey game or a football game. But with wrestling,
there's story,
with wrestling, having all those jobber matches, and sometimes there wasn't even a featured match. It was just all jobber or enhancement matches. Well, when Saturday night's main event came along, holy smokes, are you kidding me? Paul Orndorff is wrestling Don Morocco. Like, these are two stars, and it's not necessarily like a huge match, but these are two guys who destroy jobbers all the time. What's going to happen when they collide? That's how you build even opening match. That's how you build it up. They used to say on the old wrestling shows, you weren't allowed to do certain spots that were going to happen later on in the match. So if these two guys were working on their match and saying, okay, we're going to do a ref bump where the referee gets knocked out. Well, so there was some sort of overseeing agent or Vince or Gorilla or whoever saying, nope, because the main event or the second last to the main event are doing a ref bump. Well, so what? You get one big, unique spot. Same with no one did the tombstone pile driver. That was one guy gets to do it. And when he does it, it's going to be special. These days, it's more get your stuff in. And it's almost like everyone is too, in a sense, they're too nice and too accepting by saying, yeah, man, sure, do the one-winged angel or whatever, like whatever devastating move you can think of. In my mind, the most devastating move ever is Kenta Kobashi's burning hammer, because the guy only did it like 5 times in his life. It's like, okay, I'm going to have to kill him. He's kicking out of everything. He kicked out of the clothesline. I'm going to have to murder this guy legally. So burning hammer. Can you imagine someone going up to Kenta and saying, Mr. Kobashi, I'm a big fan. Do you mind if I do the burning hammer in my opening match? These days that happens. And the guy kicks out of this big devastating move. If someone went up to Kenta Kobashi and asked him that, he'd start chopping the guy like, no. Well, I was doing it every 7 years.
And it is funny, like how, one man's finisher is another man's, just regular move during the bout, look at Dusty Rhodes with his elbow smashes,
bionic,
it
was bionic, though.
It was the chemistry. I just watched Starrcade 86, I think 85 or 86. I can't remember, where it was right after the Four Horsemen had broken Dusty's leg, and he was coming back, and he beat Flair for the title in that one.
Yeah.
And the chemistry with those two guys in the ring was just electric. It was off the charts. And that was at a time when, you know, NWA or World Championship Wrestling didn't have, you know, quite the, you know, the following that it would later get.
It's almost like ECW before ECW. Like when I first started watching WCW, and then when I got into it and I started to, a couple hellos to say here. Hello, Stephanie, and hello, Bill. Thanks for joining us. And everyone else in the chat there. Hello, Fearless Heartmark. Starcade 88 was good too. So when I started watching WCW, I started renting up all the old tapes in my area. They had the old NWA shows. So yeah, Starcade 85, 86. And it was not well known. No one in my area had ever heard of it. They're like, Road Warriors, who are they? You know, what's a Sting? Right. What's a Great Muta? And I'm like, guys, seriously, this stuff is amazing. But then years later, that's exactly what ECW would get, like the really passionate kind of cult following, which I really miss. I love that we've been talking for about 15 minutes, not one word about Star Wars.
Oh,
I was gonna segue into it. You need that psychology. You can't just do the flipping, flying moves and throw everything at the screen, because not that I want to turn this into a sequel trilogy hate fest. I'd actually like to turn it into a Mandalorian love fest. But there are parallels between wrestling today, where everyone's just bouncing off of each other and doing everything that doesn't matter. And I mean, AEW, as much as I like it, is really guilty of this, with like kicking out of finishers over and over. A guy will do a triple somersault off the roof and like actually dive right through a guy's spleen and leave a hole in him, and the guy will be bleeding out. 1, 2, kick out. I'm like, what do you got to do? He'll take an axe and chop his head off. 1, 2, and he'll kick out, like, and then a roll up. 1, 2, 3. So it's kind of similar in not just Star Wars, but in all movies where, all right, just not to turn this into a sequel trilogy hate fest, but I'll bring X-Men into this. I'm trying a new order of X-Men movies. Again, everything is connected to wrestling and Star Wars. So I love that I'm talking to you, because you're a Star Wars fan and a wrestling fan. Yeah. You've heard of the Machete Order, right?
Yes, of course.
Which is, refresh my memory again. I know.
So the Machete Order, well, there's been a lot of variants, but it's 1, 2,
New Hope.
Yes. 4, 5.
Sith.
3, 6. Yes.
Right. So I leave off the first two, but when I watch Star Wars, I like to watch New Hope, Empire, Sith, Jedi. I like taking that step back and then step forward. And I feel like it really helps Return of the Jedi, filling in those blanks instead of watching Jedi having all these questions raised and then going back and watching them and having a really unsatisfying ending with Revenge of the Sith. And also it's just better than watching them in order of the way they're supposed to occur as well. So I'm trying this with X-Men because I love X-Men, love that animated series, love the comics. Some of the movies are so-so, but started with the 2000 first X-Men movie, knocked my socks off again. Amazing, amazing movie. Just gets better with age. So instead of going to X2, which has always kind of been disappointing to me, like I didn't enjoy it as much as the first one. It felt more like hey, it's a big sequel, everybody. You know, it's bigger, badder, better. This time after X-Men, we went and watched Wolverine X-Men Origins, which is like, what? That one really sucks. But I had this idea, even though it starts good, it's just as it goes on, it's like, whew, there's starting to be really not good stuff in this movie. The tone is definitely different from X-Men. But that's what I'm talking about. The first one was all about psychology. It was about Charles Xavier and Magneto just staring at each other, and you can feel that electricity. X-Men Origins Wolverine is more about swords and explosions, and he's hanging on a helicopter. It's too much, too many high spots, not enough memorable spots. So I'm glad I did it in that order, because X-Men, the first movie, really raises so many questions about his origin, and then X2 doesn't touch on it at all. Well, not really. I mean, there's a little bit of stuff with Stryker, but they kind of fluff
you get
it
some
off.
Flashback, but it's all done in very short, punchy flashback moments.
Yeah. So I thought,
you don't take any time with it.
From like a satisfaction standpoint, it would be better in this order. So I'm kind of putting together my own X-Men machete order, and I'm liking it so far. I mean, even though Origins is kind of bad, I don't really like calling it a bad movie because 75% of it is great. If someone would just do a cut of it, like that Hobbit cut, I think you could actually salvage a really good movie out of Origins Wolverine. But
are you going to do a video on your X-Men machete order if you perfect it?
Sure, yeah, and you know, everyone is welcome to swap things and stuff, and you know, mine will be specifically for me. I mean, I'm leaving Logan off just because I don't enjoy being depressed, but I know there's some people out there who love being depressed, watching one of my heroes get Alzheimer's and murder all of you know my heroes. It's not my.
You said we weren't going to talk about the sequel trilogy. What do you mean?
Oh, jeez. I tried, man. I hadn't seen Rise of Skywalker, and I loaded it up on Disney Plus. I mean, it couldn't be easier. It wasn't the investment of going to a theater and paying all that money.
But you had never seen it. You're saying you had never seen it?
No, I had not seen it. I had seen parts of it that popped up, clips on YouTube and stuff, but I had never actually watched it from beginning to end because it was done for me with Last Jedi, and I didn't hate Last Jedi. That's the weird thing. I'm disappointed, but I wasn't one of those. How dare they? I really agree with a lot of what people say. Like, how could they? But I wasn't really a how dare they type of guy. But I'd never seen Rise of Skywalker because I was like, I'm out. Like I'm good. Luke disappearing and floating off that's it. That's me. And my investment in that, story's conclusion. I was like, I'm going back to the Zahn books. Have fun without me.
Right.
But there it is on Disney Plus. It couldn't be easier. It's not, you don't have to buy it like the old days, buy a Blu-ray or anything. It's just there. You push a button and it'll play. You don't even have to pay $3 to rent it. So I go, okay. I mean, it's almost like when movies were on TV when you were a kid, right?
Yeah.
Why not? And I watched about 15 minutes of it and I was like, oh, that's why not.
You only made it 15 minutes in?
I couldn't, I don't know, man. The feeling Star Wars is all about feeling for me. And there was no feeling. It felt like, and the really weird thing is that this does not apply to all Star Wars. Mandalorian has that feeling. Mandalorian, who knew, was the sequel we wanted. To me, Mandalorian is the follow-up to Return of the Jedi I always dreamed of.
I've made this analogy before. I always feel like, in The Nightmare Before Christmas, when Jack comes back from, Christmas Town, and he's just absolutely hell-bent on trying to decode and deconstruct what is so magical and special about Christmas. And he's doing all the experiments, and he's putting snowflakes under magnifying or microscopes and all that. And I feel like, but he misses the spirit. He puts all of that research and thought, and we can assume money into it, but he doesn't get to the soul and the heart of what makes it magic. And to me, that is the big sin of the sequel trilogy. They had all the money in the world. They had the original cast.
Yeah.
I've heard people liken it to, imagine getting the Beatles back together and they never recorded an album, with all of them. I mean, it was to call it irresponsible with the lore and with the privilege that they were given. I think would be an understatement, really. I think it is probably certainly in the world of popular culture and modern filmmaking, it's the biggest lost opportunity, I think, ever.
They wanted to be number one at something. I think they achieved that. As the number one biggest blunder, missed opportunity. Lewis, I think, puts it very well. Star Wars was never about swinging laser swords. We need to have a George off before we sign off here.
Laser swords.
Georgia. Ships flying. It was about the wonder. It was about the human story. Imagination.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. It was all. it was all show and no heart. There was really no heart to it. They didn't do anything to add to the mythology. And the areas where I get a little frustrated with the prequels, for that matter, are where I felt that George didn't add to his, Force Ghosts is a great example. We were even told, I mean, George was on the record in interviews saying, we're going to cover all that. You're going to find out exactly why that all happens in Force Ghosts. And, it never comes up
for a Force Ghost. This guy's really hard to, to manage, but yeah, sorry. I just had to.
That's beautiful. I love that on a card.
Yeah.
That is nice, man. Fans are just knocking it out of the park with the custom stuff lately.
I was waiting for the Force Ghost explanation, and who cares?
Yeah. I think he was very caught up in the love story. I'll use air quotes there. He was very caught up in the love story. He was very caught up in the tragedy of Darth Vader. And I feel like he was so focused on that. And I think the politics of the story was in his mind. He was really analyzing how good people go bad. That was his, he talked about Hitler, at one point Hitler was just a little baby. What happens? And, in the process, I think he really left some low hanging fruit unplucked, and Force Ghost is a good example of that.
Yeah. And with the turn of Anakin, I've always recommended the Revenge of the Sith book. It's done. It's not like it could be done in better hands. It was done.
Amen. Amen. The novelization's fantastic.
Matthew Stover did it.
Yep.
Salute Matthew Stover. That's one of the best Star Wars books out there. It's right up there with the Zahn trilogy. And when the first time I ever read Revenge of the Sith, the book, I went, "What is this? Is this based on the movie?" Sort of. But he got to write his own dialogue and put in those electricity moments, so the book doesn't have so much laser swords and explosions and stuff. It's more those staring at each other and ruminations and heaviness, and the dragon, which is so sorely missed from Revenge of the Sith. That dragon that's whispering to Anakin. That's what the whole the prequel trilogy was missing.
Yeah. I mean, you can see signs of George trying to do that. He's got close-ups, and I think honestly Hayden Christensen gets sort of a raw deal. I think he's from your neck of the woods up there, isn't he?
He's I think maybe over in Vancouver, other side of the country. But he's still a knucklehead. So yeah, I'm still very, very proud of him. I think he's going to show people what his supporters have been saying for years on Kenobi, regardless of what his role is. Even if he's a burnt mess, I think even under prosthetics and stuff, it's all about the eyes with great actors. And I think he's going to show people, I was always a great actor. It's just light me right, shoot me right, cut me right, give me the right thing to say, and I'll get
coach me. I mean, he was pulled out of obscurity. He was working on sort of a teen drama show. And even then, if you go back, you can find that on YouTube. Higher Ground, I think, was the name of the show. And you can see clips. His character in that show had a bunch of baggage. The character was being sexually abused by a parent or a step parent. And I mean, he plays it so well. And then Shattered Glass is another great performance by him. Phenomenal. He's a good actor. He really is. But he was on the set of this huge movie surrounded by green screen. They were working at a breakneck pace. Yeah. It's the most anticipated movie of all time. One of them. And
he didn't have the luxury of the funness of the original trilogy too, because it's not like Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill were better actors than him. It's just they had the luxury of being in a fun kind of campy teen movie, whereas Hayden is in this tragedy, this Greek tragedy. So he couldn't just. I mean, they tried to give him the fun lines, the flippant lines, but it didn't really fit in there. So yeah, like with the sequel trilogy, the prequel trilogy, I just decided, okay, this ship has sailed. I like Rebels and a little bit of Clone Wars here and there, but pretty much the ship has sailed. And then guy by the name of Jon Favreau goes, hold that ship. there's still some gas left in the tank here. And The Mandalorian, every episode has been a gift. Every episode, even my least favorite episode of the whole run so far, I would still watch it 10 times before watching one of the prequel or sequel trilogy movies.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the show that you did after the season 2 finale when we got to see our Luke Skywalker.
Our Luke.
It was great fun. You articulated things so well, as you always do. But that was our hero. You know, he came back. I mean, that was the fulfillment of all those years that we had since 1983 dreaming about what happened to Luke after. Would we ever see Luke after? And we finally did. And the fact that Mark Hamill was involved, and we know that he was, you know, more involved than we
how involved do you think Mark was? He was like eating nachos. Yeah, yes. Did the check clear? That's great.
Yeah. How many lines do I have to do?
You think he recorded some lines and they were like, we can't use this. I will train him as a Jedi.
Well, we know now what the technology was. We know that. So they de-aged the face, but the voice tech was this European company. Did you see the demo, Michael, that they had online that they did with I'll send you the clip. There's a YouTube clip of this guy. He invented this, essentially a synthesizer for the human voice, and he demos it with Barack Obama. And what's so astonishing of it is he records a brief clip of President Obama saying, you know, a couple of lines, and then he just starts talking through the processor. And it's not like every time he says the word, say what, it's the exact same emphasis. He can change the emphasis and it still does its magic and makes it sound, you know, like it's Obama. It's incredible. Wow. Yeah, I'll send you the link. It's amazing. I watched it like 10 times because I couldn't believe it's like going into the future. But it's very dangerous. I mean, when you think about the potential for fraud, and yes, I mean, very, very dangerous.
I think there's only one voice that can't be modified.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because can you imagine? I mean, with another $1 billion, maybe he could find a different voice that's not that croaky. But I love it. You know,
Sean Connery. I want to sound like Sean Connery.
yeah, right. He's pretty cool. Yeah, I
paid $1 billion and I sound just like him now. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Sexy.
Well, we had Josh Robert Thompson, who does he does all the deep fake videos of George Lucas. He does absolutely the greatest George Lucas impression there is, because it's not even an impression, it's voice doubling, but it's him saying just incredibly wacky stuff. But Josh Robert Thompson's observation about George is like, no matter how much money he has, no matter how much success, he always just sounds so bedraggled by life. And you know, everything's just you know, every time they ask him a question, it's like, well, you know, it's like this, you know, he's been asked it 500,000 times.
Yeah. I watched Empire Dreams again on Disney Plus. And I was a little strange to notice how black hair, black beard George is when he's making A New Hope. And then 3 years later, by the time he's making Empire, gray.
Yeah.
A little bit of gray. And then Return of the Jedi, like, what has happened to this man? He's aged 20 years and 6. Yeah. And you know, we all know not just the stresses of making the movies, but then divorce, especially with just adopted a kid. And, you know, we like to poke fun at Uncle George, but we call him Uncle George because we do love him. I mean, he feels like family to us, and it's always a, you know, lighthearted, good natured. And, you know, if George ever needs anything, not that he'd ever ask me, you know, I'd be there for him in a heartbeat because I love him.
Does he need a kidney? Am I a donor? I would gladly do it. You know, I remember at one of the Star Wars celebrations, I think it was Celebration 4, maybe, or it could be Celebration 4 or 5. But anyway, Dan Madsen, who's such an incredible guy. He was the basically the founder of the official Star Trek fan club, and then later on worked for Lucasfilm to create the official fan club for Star Wars, and the very first Star Wars Celebration in Indianapolis, he and Anthony Daniels put together. But he had these shirts made, and they just said, "Thank you, George." Yeah. And the fans were wearing them all over the con, and it was great because, yes, Star Wars, like anything else, any other fandom, within the family, we'll poke fun and we'll joke, but don't anybody outside the family say anything bad about George or Star Wars.
You can tell. There's people who can tell the intangibles, and there's people who can't tell the intangibles because they just can only take things literally. So that's kind of what's happening, and it's really exploded on the internet. It's the intangibles versus the literals, and so when you're joking about anything, I mean, how many times have people tried to joke on the internet and Twitter and text, and then in a public group? And most people are fine with it. And then one people is like, "How dare you?" It's like, yeah, that's the person who might have the issue. They might be missing a sense of humor chip or a sarcasm chip or just good-natured fun chip versus the other ones. Matthew McMillan has a great comment here because we're talking, obviously you're going to talk about the sequel, the prequel, the original trilogy, but Rogue One and Solo, thoughts on those two? Those are good movies. Not legendary like the OT is for me, where I watch them over and over again, but I really enjoyed both of them, especially Solo.
Well, I'll flip that. I mean, of the two, my favorite is Rogue One. I think that it's absolutely brilliant the way it weaves itself right into Episode 4, New Hope. I would like Solo more if I could actually see what's happening. Oh, and we've talked about this on Rebel Force Radio a lot.
I don't know if I can even shake my camera. This and
it's not even so much that as it is the darkness. Oh, everything is so dark. I mean, it's the only movie that I've ever tried, in recent years to crank up the contrast so that I can, or the picture, the brightness, to try and see what's going on. And I don't know if it's by design. It was clearly plagued with all kinds of production issues and problems. I think over half the movie was reshot once Ron Howard was assigned to it. So I don't know if that's just trying to make two movies look like one, or what that's a symptom of. I hope that we get the real story behind that. But there's a lot to love about it. Again, somebody who I think is underrated is Alden Ehrenreich. I think he does a phenomenal job. Hey, I'm not that tall either. Of course, I'm not cast as Han Solo, but there was a lot of cracks about his height. But I thought charisma-wise, I think he had it. I think that on set, I think he was being overcoached at times, and that feels a little obvious. But all things considered, I think he comes out looking like the star of that movie. I really do.
Yeah. I was in the camp of people that said the height doesn't work for me because he's playing Harrison Ford. I didn't want him playing Han Solo. I wanted him playing Harrison Ford because I went into it with A-Team baggage, where I went, oh my God, like Liam Neeson, arguably a bigger star than George Peppard, was playing George Peppard. He wasn't playing Hannibal. He was playing George Peppard. And Bradley Cooper was playing Dirk Benedict. So whenever they're doing this, and they did it in the same movie, that's the real head scratcher. Lando is perfect. Donald Glover as Lando is perfect.
He's great too. I don't know. I guess it's all a matter of perspective, and maybe it's of course it is, but maybe it's in your own head canon or whatever it is, the way you see Han Solo. For me, he worked and he worked very well. But I can certainly see there's room for some criticism. But as far as Rogue One goes, I thought that I thought that Rogue One was just absolutely fantastic. Now looking at The Mandalorian, I would suggest that perhaps that crew would have been really fun to see, in a series. We're going to see some of that with the Cassian Andor.
Isn't it weird? Like Cassian Andor, he's going to be playing himself 10 years younger, even though he's 10 years older. I guess it works for Better Call Saul. So, it'll work. It's just, it's weird to know like this guy dies. So, okay.
It is. I mean, I know what they're trying to do, and they want to sort of create this world of rebel spies, and they want to use him as an anchor character. So I'm probably more excited about the idea and the concept than I am about, oh, give me more Cassian Andor. I mean, I'm not complaining, but I'm very, very interested in sort of this world of espionage in a galaxy far, far away. Could be great.
Yeah, I mean the underworld thing. George had mentioned that Mr. Lucas, Uncle George, had mentioned he wanted to do a Star Wars underworld show before he sold Star Wars over to Disney, and it's like, okay, that might be interesting, but aren't there better options? And you know, you could say Mandalorian is kind of the underground Star Wars. Boba Fett will be even more. I'm like, yes, I'm actually really excited about this now. There's a comment here about Shia LaBeouf. Sorry, I lost it. It just it's in here somewhere. I can't find it, but Shia LaBeouf in Star Wars, who would he play? Did he get into trouble again? Are we not supposed to talk about Shia LaBeouf?
I don't know. He was one of the very first stories we covered on the Force Cast. Yeah. I think he should be maybe Palpatine's bumbling son, the one that didn't work out. You know, Rey's dad. I think that's who he could be. Rey's dad. Just do it. But I mean, I think he was part of one of the first stories we covered, because he was arrested on the streets of Chicago at like 3 a.m. in a Walgreens, and we're like, dude, you know, nothing good ever happens at 3 a.m. in a Walgreens, no matter who you are.
What about a live action version of Jax? Shia LaBeouf as Jax.
You know, I that's one area where my gifted co-host and we always disagree, because he's always and Michael, you may also be a big fan of those original Star Wars Marvel comics, but I crack up because I don't know how anyone takes them seriously, because they're so awful. But for the people where that's like, and I know, you know, because you know, I was 6 years old when Return of the Jedi came out, so I didn't have those long periods of wait between episode, you know, Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi, where those Marvel comics were all that I had. So I guess if that's what you were holding on to, and you know, I can understand, but you know, people are just a little too precious with those. They want to hold them up to a much higher standard.
I mean, there's the nostalgia, which is they're going to be special. But then nostalgia aside, if you never read them and you're reading them now because the lore of Star Wars, these legendary tales, that's not what you're going to get. I mean, that wasn't the design of them. They were comics, monthly comics that were just meant to be read and put aside, maybe even used as birdliner, as crazy as that might sound. I mean, not everyone was keeping their comics back in the day. It wasn't a collector mentality. It was a consume and then over your shoulder, throw it out. How much packaging got thrown out? Boxes of vintage toys. How many toys? Parents threw out toys.
Oh my gosh.
Well, you don't need these anymore.
How many nearly pristine Star Wars action figures got thrown into landfills? Can you imagine? That's heartbreaking. I stay awake at night thinking about that.
I want to ask you about that guy. Is it Mike from the Red Letter Media? The guy who melted. Did you see this video? He melted a giant, like, I think it was an aquarium of Star Wars figures. Have you ever heard of this?
Oh, I did. Yes, I did see that. Yeah, they're all vintage figures too.
Yeah. Poured acid.
Yeah, just to prove a point. Yeah, it's
now they're a unique brand, so you know they're instigators. They're looking to have fun with people. But what did you?
I was deeply offended, and I want them canceled immediately.
Yeah, I think they're uncancelable at this point.
Right.
Because honestly, the worst they've ever done, the worst they could ever do, was in their first video. Like, I don't think they'll ever be worse than their debut. You know, with the stuff.
Well, what was their debut? I don't remember.
Well, if not their debut, it was early on. It was one of those Star Wars reviews. I think it was a prequel review. But like the guy in the basement, Plinkett, and you know, the psychopath who's murdering people, and you know, messing with his cat and stuff. I'm like, these guys have never had a reputation to lose. I mean, they've always been flippant and funny.
Yeah, I mean, that reminds me. I mean, you think about the Family Guy parodies that George helped put together. I mean, that some of that stuff it is funny that the people that seem to be immune to or almost Teflon when it comes to this oversensitivity thing. A guy like Seth MacFarlane, who was an equal opportunity offender, and I like Seth MacFarlane. I'm not knocking him for it, but he'll make fun of anybody and everybody, but yet he's not held to the same standard as someone who just makes a faux pas.
Yeah,
it's weird.
Yeah, it is. It's like a comedian used to be able to get away with a lot, but it goes back to what I was saying about the the literals versus the read between the lines and don't take things too seriously. So we were talking earlier about, and I really wanted to talk to you about this, the return of Luke Skywalker, because that's the Luke that we wanted in the sequel trilogy. And from what I hear about the behind the scenes stuff, which I try not to get too into, but they didn't believe it was possible. That's not something we can do or should do. It's, we've got to smash these new characters over. And I don't like seeing my heroes be used as jobbers to get over, the new
That's a great analogy for sure.
So that's why I just couldn't get into the sequel trilogy. But that Mandalorian episode is how you do it right. It was flawless because Luke comes in and he doesn't get snide comments from the other characters, especially the female characters, which, it's happening too often where gotta cut down the men in order to build up the women. Sure. They did it old school. He walked in and everyone was in awe of him. And going back to wrestling, that's how you get this, mysterious cloaked figure before we know who he is. That's how we get him over. We don't say, isn't he a little short for an X-Wing pilot? No, you fall silent. Like, who is this? You build that moment because it's so hard to build a moment, a special moment. And it's so easy once you start to get it going to dissipate it with bathos. It's like farting at a funeral. Don't do it. It's read the room. Don't do it. It's not appropriate. Have some tact. And so they know how to do it. Like they did it perfectly. The music was really gripping and it made me sit on the edge of my seat. Like, who is this? And the whole time I was like everyone else, I'm like, it can't be. They've screwed this up so much. It can't be. This can't be done right. It can't be.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got to come in here and he's got to slip on a banana peel, and the lightsaber has to fly out, and Sasha Banks will grab it and start taking care of business.
Let me show you how it's done, man.
Yeah. But he came in, he owned them. Like he went through those dark troopers like a hot knife through butter. He walked in and no one had any snide comments. They just looked at him like, are you a Jedi? Even the way Pedro Pascal said it, are you a Jedi? That's how a Jedi should be treated. The word should make your heart race. They never did that in the prequel trilogy ever. And I didn't really feel it in a lot of the other movies. A little bit in Rogue One. I am the Force and the Force is with me. Or whatever the line is. Like that reverence, that like spiritual reverence for Jedi. That was the moment where I went, wow, they did it. They gave me that, moment of people looking at a Jedi as a living legend. It was like Bruno Sammartino was standing there. Give me that little ugly baby. I'll train him in the weight room. A living legend was standing there. Yeah. Like it can be done. It's just they chose not to because they thought they had a bigger, bankable property here. Oh, we'll build this character up and it'll be the biggest character ever. No, the money was in Luke Skywalker, and it still is apparently. I mean, how many people's passion for Luke has been reignited because of that episode.
Right. Well, I know that the orders and the demand for the action figure for that Jedi Luke action figure was through the roof, and you can look at some of the aftermarket prices on eBay.
It's always been my favorite. This one just came out, got it from Big Bad Toy Store. Now they did one a few years ago, which was wrong. It was this picture, but it was the Death Star Luke with the
exactly. Yes.
So then they corrected it. They figured out they messed up and they corrected it and they changed the picture. But just recently, just now, this one came out. It's the original vintage card art card picture they used with his cloak and everything. And that's the but years before I was even into Star Wars, I wanted that figure. I didn't know who Luke was, but I dug his outfit and the green lightsaber. So
it was the first. It was the first figure that I personally owned, though. Awesome. I can honestly say that the very first toy that I ever remember holding in my hand was a Kenner 3 3/4 inch Stormtrooper figure that was my brother's. So I had an older brother. He's 4 years ahead of me, and so he had the Falcon and he had these toys. So my awareness of these characters was formed at a very, very early age. Yet I had never seen the movies. I wasn't aware that there were movies. I was aware that there was a storybook that went with it was a storybook that went with a little 45 record, and you will know it is time to turn the page when you hear R2D2 beep like this,
Were you?
And so
were you doing DJ?
Yeah. And so that was how I got the story.
Swank could be a thing after, if Rebel Force Radio ever peters out, MC Swank. Records.
I'll be spinning Frank Sinatra records before anything like that, I can tell you. But you talk about machete order. I guess this would be my own machete order. I saw episode 4 at a cousin's house because it was on HBO and it was in the ramp up to Return of the Jedi coming out in the theater. Then I saw Return of the Jedi, completely changed my life. Like anyone else that saw any of the original films in the theater when at an impressionable age. And I went a couple of years before I saw Empire Strikes Back because it wasn't available readily on home video. And I had an uncle with a Laserdisc player. And as soon as that thing hit Laserdisc, I was up there at his house to see it. So I saw 4, 6, and 5. Always, so curious about that there was this missing chapter for me.
How many? And I think George built the franchise on sneaking that into the title a year later. Episode 4. People were so passionate about Star Wars, and then they watched for the re-release episode 4.
Right.
What? There's 3 missing ones? So, George understands psychology. He knows, I got a hit here. I'm going to tell him, not only going forward are you missing pieces, and you have to be excited about those, but you've missed some, a giant chunk of the story. And, it made it feel more like an instant legend.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the movie, well, I'm of course biased. I've dedicated the last 15 years of my life doing a podcast about it. And for me, it's always been, I think, Michael, you relate to this as well. It's always been about the story. It's always been about the story and big characters, not little characters, big archetypes that teach us.
Dude. Where is he? He's on the other side of me. This guy right here. Who's Salacious B? Crumb?
Oh, yeah, right. Yes, of course.
Can we please get a Disney Plus Salacious B. Crumb series?
I would just like to see him do a mashup of the Muppet Show where instead of Kermit coming out to host, it's him.
I want a HasLab $500 Salacious B. Crumb. Just not huge, just this. A figure on a card this size, $500.
No, wait a minute. That's the one from that big Death Star set that they released, right? Or that's not a custom, is it?
It's a custom card, and I think it's just the Salacious that came with Jabba.
Okay, because I have a carded Salacious.
Oh, they did
on a vintage card. They did it, and they put that out. They put Mouse Droid out, and it was in this big Death Star set. And they were on Revenge of the Jedi cards. And I got mine. He probably would never publicly admit to this anymore, but I got mine from Dave Filoni. He handed it to me in his office when we were hanging out at Skywalker Ranch.
Is he allowed to acknowledge your existence?
I don't know. I do know that we have a big enough listening audience that I do know that he still gets peppered with questions about when are you going back on Rebel Force Radio when he does make fan appearances. But he's a good company man, and I'm glad he's still around, making Star Wars, and
he's
especially
the prince.
With somebody like Jon Favreau.
He's the prince that was promised. And I've mentioned it in other videos too. When George handed off the baton, he's the guy who should have had the baton. The Kathleen Kennedy decision was a head scratcher. I mean, maybe it makes perfect sense for, the way business is done these days. But it's like, wouldn't you give it to the guy who's been sitting under George's learning tree for the last God knows how many years and understands it?
Absolutely. Of course they should have, but I think Kathleen Kennedy approached it. They were going to churn these films out, kind of with thinking of the studio first, and the director and the writers
make their investment
were secondary. Yeah. I mean, George is an auteur, I mean, and I love when people say, well, how can you criticize a sequel trilogy for not being completely flushed out? George Lucas was making it up as he went along. Well, that's partially true, but it's also very helpful if you're making it up as you go along, it's one person making it up as they go along instead of this bizarre relay race that they did.
The booking committee.
Oh yeah. Everything from story group and yeah, it was, it's still a head scratcher, but as a lot of people that have listened to our shows over the years know, I'm not a huge fan of written Star Wars books and comics. You mentioned Stover's Revenge of the Sith. I think that's definitely a standout, as is the Darth Plagueis novel is another one that's great. I do really like the Timothy Zahn, that Thrawn trilogy, but for me, and Star Wars is a big universe, and there's aspects of it that appeal to a lot of people. Some people are way into the ships, the technology, the armor, the troopers. That's their thing. For me, it's always been about the mythology of it and learning more about humanity and yourself individually every time you watch these things. So what doesn't resonate with me is when you get down to the minutia. I don't need to know that Han just used the refresher on the Falcon, and then and that's what that you have to when you're writing a novel. You have to get into the details. And I think Star Wars personally tends to fall apart a little bit when it's not Star Trek. It's not meant to be seen with that type of critical eye or with that much infusion of science fact. It's a fantasy that happens to take place in outer space. But it's a fairy tale and it's a fantasy. And when they forget that, and this idea of the Mandalorian with the baby, it was great. It was mythic, and just I think the perfect way to kick off a whole new chapter, but still keeping it very big in scope, I think.
Mm-hmm. I've had that problem.
Big questions.
I've had that problem with the books too. I remember when I finished the Zahn trilogy, and I was so blown away by it. I was so excited to read the next books. And what was there? The Truce at Bakura.
Courtship of Princess Leia.
Read those and I went, that was just okay. That's weird. And so the books definitely have their own prequel trilogy, sequel trilogy level of quality or memorableness. And that's one of the things that you mentioned that always takes me out of it. The over description of the technical stuff. I don't care about the technical stuff. If I want technical stuff, I'll read one of these books. Star Trek, right? And that's what Trek's all about, like the gel packs and all that stuff, the warp coils, and that's cool. Like that's what Star Trek is. But in Star Wars, it's kind of like it's trying to copy Star Trek in a sense when that's not what it's supposed to be about.
I know a lot of people, they point to when the West End games, the role-playing game for Star Wars and all the guidebooks and all that came out, they point to that as, it was a big moment. And if you want that level of detail out of your Star Wars, then that would be a big moment. But to me, that's all trivia, and I'm not, it's fun. And I like the characters' names. I like to know what planet they're from, but I would much rather sit down and have, I know this probably sounds snobby and I don't mean it to sound that way. It's just about what turns me on. I'd much rather sit down and deconstruct, Luke and Obi-Wan's relationship or Luke and, Vader's relationship. I'd love to have an hour-long conversation about that than, phase 1 armor versus phase 2 armor of the clones.
Yeah, I some of the comic books I just kind of drift off, nod off when I'm reading them. Same deal, but the ones that really grab my attention are the ones that delve into those relationships. One of the newer Marvel comics that they put out after the Disney sale has Luke going to Obi-Wan's hut
Yes.
and finding a chest and reading his journal, and I'm like, now we're cooking.
Yep.
Now this is interesting. And I know you're not a big fan of the books. I don't blame you, because like I said, in my opinion, like I've read quite a few Star Wars books back in the Dark Ages, when there wasn't anything except Shadows of the Empire, which is almost a thing. It's almost a thing that they're excited about. There's
they did everything. They did everything but make a movie.
Yeah,
it was a movie without a movie.
Or a show or a cartoon. Yeah,
right.
It's the closest thing that they ever, came to doing an actual movie or something. But the solo books, if you've never read the Han Solo, it might be a trilogy, and I'm not talking
Brian
about
Daley books, right?
Well, not the old ones. I know they did some old thin ones. It might have even been before Empire Strikes Back came out. There's some old thin ones, but then there was I think it was a trilogy of 3 new ones, and they're thicker. I think they came out after the Zan books in the 90s, I believe. Maybe someone in the chat can refresh my memory. But I remember reading 2 of them, I believe. Never got around to reading the 3rd one. But after I read those books, I went, this is the closest thing to the original trilogy of any of the books that I've read. And that's when I realized, wow, Han Solo is the heart of Star Wars for me, because you can do stories without Luke, and I don't know, that doesn't feel quite right, but it's okay. You can do a story with Luke, and that's pretty cool, like the old farm boy in there, and stories with just Leia in it. We had a whole bunch of stories with just the droids, and those were okay. The droids cartoon was kind of cool, and Ewoks. But when you put Han Solo in there, even with no one else in there, just Han and Chewie, the movie I thought was very entertaining. And the books, I was like, this has that swagger. This has that, gallivanting across the galaxy, the lack of technical specifications, because punch it. That's all we need to know. Punch it, Chewie. And those to me felt like the most true to Star Wars, the Han Solo books.
Well, I think Han, exists to make that world accessible to us normal people watching, from the outside in that universe. That's the role I believe that Han Solo plays.
Yeah, he's our conduit.
He is, no question, because you don't want to be Luke at the beginning, because he's wormy and he's whiny, and then by the time he becomes the Jedi, it's like he's almost a Messiah type character. But Han is always, he's a rock, and he's always there, and he's always Han. So yeah, he is that constant until, of course, they kill him. But until they do that, he's always there.
Well, not in my canon, not in my head canon, but I just looked it up. It's a trilogy of books by A.C. Crispin: The Paradise Snare, The Hutt Gambit, and Rebel Dawn.
I remember Hutt Gambit. I didn't read it, but I just remember that title.
Yeah.
What do you think about since you are a fan of the Solo movie? Do you like the idea of maybe some direct to Disney Plus follow-ups to that, or maybe even a series that would pick up where that left off?
I am all in if they hire what's his name, Anthony and Gruber. Anthony, I mean, that's who I had my heart set on. Like, that was one of the reasons I always tell people, look, the reason I wasn't satisfied with Alden Ehrenreich is because this precious gift, this impossibility was presented, and they didn't do it, right? It's just like you were talking when we first started talking. You had the money. You had the whole cast. How did you screw this up? Anthony Gruber looks just
one job.
Anthony Gruber looks exactly like a young Harrison Ford. He sounds just like him when he wants to. He's an incredible impressionist. He's got the mannerisms. He's the height. There's a picture of Anthony Gruber who did a movie with Harrison Ford, and they took a picture. They never actually shared a scene, but in Gruber,
does he play the younger version of Harrison's
Age,
character? Okay.
Age
Know
of
exactly who
Adeline.
yes, I know exactly who you're talking about now. Yeah.
So there's a picture of them side by side. It looks like one of those joke pictures where you're like with yourself 10 years ago or 20 years ago. It's like, what is this, a Photoshop?
Yeah.
So there's a picture of them side by side. He's the right height. He's the right look. And the main criticism of him was, well, he doesn't have the experience. He's an impressionist, not an actor. And I just said, give that man the line to say, and he'll read it as if Harrison Ford was reading it, and I'll be happy. Because when it comes to Han Solo, I don't care that I'm not getting an Oscar performance. I just want him to read the cool line and be cool. And in the videos that Gruber did on his YouTube channel, he's cool, or he can at least act cool. I think he's actually cool, in real life. He's a pretty cool guy. Yeah. But they had him, and they just said, no, we're gonna go in a different direction.
What's your take as you look back on River Phoenix and Last Crusade? I know it's not very long, but
he's great except for the hair. I can never get over the hair. That kid needed a haircut, and that was.
Wait a minute, this is the pot calling the kettle black, is it not? What's going on here?
It's pretty short at the moment.
Pretty short. These.
The thing is, when you're playing an iconic character, it's time to put your own ego and your style and your swag aside, because you need to be true to the iconic character who is larger than you are. Sure. So Harrison Ford did Mosquito Coast with River Phoenix. And when he was talking to Steven, hey, Steven, here you need some young punk to play me. So he said, well, I did a movie with this kid. He looks just like me, and he reminds me of me. So Steven's like, it'll be great, fantastic, great. Okay, like River Phoenix was a fantastic actor, and I don't see Harrison Ford when I look at him, but he did a bang-on impression of what a young Harrison Ford or young Indiana Jones would have been like. But the hair was River Phoenix hair. It wasn't, I don't believe for a second, like Henry Jones Jr. ever let his hair get that long in 1920, whatever year that's supposed to be. Wrong year, wrong hairstyle. That's River Phoenix going, it's just how I do, bro.
Congratulate you, just ruined the movie for me forever now, Mike.
Sorry. I love the performance. It's just the hair. Yeah. It's like, why didn't you get a haircut? I know why. I wish I didn't. It's just, you get a haircut. It's like Donald Glover didn't come into the Lando movie going, I'm going to make a drastic change to the look of Lando Calrissian. He looked just like Lando.
Right. He didn't come in with dreads.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Or some other, like a Fu Manchu or something like that. Lando has a look, and it gets to the point where you have to be accurate. I mean, I love it when I see a prequel and it's like that Origins movie, Wolverine. Not a great movie, but when he puts on the coat and it's a brand new or a newer version of the coat he wore in the first movie. Yeah. Like, oh, that's awesome that they actually tracked that coat down or recreated it. And I'm like, the details, give me the old thing, but shine it up if you're going to do a prequel. And I just expect that in any prequel, especially in Star Wars prequels. That's why I with Hayden Christensen, he's a great actor, but I wanted Sebastian Shaw, like a younger version of Sebastian Shaw, not Sebastian Stan. People have been confusing the two, right? Sebastian Stan is
very different people.
He's a young Luke. He's not an old Anakin, but I wanted like a tall, kind of distinguished looking, traditional, hair combed to the side, towering. Hayden's kind of tall, but he's not towering. They got close, but I really wanted that real major height discrepancy where Obi-Wan was looking up, at this tower, and it would have meant so much more when this giant of a man, mountain of a man, like King Elendil the Tall, turns bad. It's like, it's not just the fall of a good man. This guy's dangerous. He's 7 feet tall. Like, we're in major trouble.
Yes. Here. Right. Yeah. No, that would have certainly added to it, because you don't, because maybe it's just the way that, I mean, Hayden's a really nice looking guy. He never does look threatening.
No, that whole thing, I think we're on the same wavelength with the casting. That was more to sell tickets. You know, that's why they tweak the ages, which another thing that really bugs me about the prequels is like Obi-Wan is not supposed to be 20. He's supposed to be 40. What are you doing here? You know,
Yep.
Anakin's not supposed to be 9. He's supposed to be, 25, 30, and then gets to 40. So
more Kenneth Branagh.
So
that's who I thought was going to be playing Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Oh, he'd be so perfect. Isn't it wild now? You look at pictures of Ewan today, it's like, oh, he looks today exactly like Brana looked when Phantom Menace came out. So we were getting our second chance. And maybe we'll wrap up with what's to come with Star Wars. And I'm sure you've been talking with Jimmy a lot about that on Rebel Force Radio. What are you most excited for of the, what is it, like 27 new Star Wars shows?
There's a lot, can
we call this the light times?
Yeah.
If
1985 if 85 to 95 or 93, whenever Zahn came out, I'm most looking forward to, I gotta be honest, I mean, Kenobi. I mean, I'm not probably unique in that sense. I think Boba Fett is going to be. I think Boba Fett is going to be interesting. I'm hoping that it's not so much a what happened to Boba Fett from the time he ended up in the Sarlacc pit and all. I don't really want it to be about old Boba Fett. I mean, you give me some threads there as to how it happened, but I'm more interested in seeing him just create chaos and havoc within the Hutt, mafia, and let's just see I want to see what's happening from the moment we got that teaser onwards, not so much about the past. So I don't want it to be a prequel.
Do you think we'll be seeing Daniel Logan in the Book of Boba Fett?
I would be how do I put this? No. We will not be seeing. No, we will not be. I know for a fairly solid fact that we won't be seeing Daniel Logan in Book of Boba Fett. Yeah, I'm sorry to ruin that. If anybody was really counting on it, but.
Is he also off limits? Like, has he done something, or I don't want to spread?
No, I don't. No, I don't think he's. No, I don't think he's done anything to. I mean, he's a great ambassador for Star Wars to fans. I mean, there's nobody more giving and kind to fans than Daniel Logan, especially with kids. He's just amazing, probably because he was a kid when he came into Star Wars. I just, I don't know that he's ever been, now he did some voice work for Clone Wars.
Right. He did.
So he did. Yeah. So I just don't know that he's necessarily the right build, the right age. He's always just kind of missed it. And I think that's probably the case here.
He seems like he's always, at conventions and stuff, fantastic guy, really always seemed enthusiastic and passionate, not just for his past in Star Wars, but for his future. He was always excited about doing more. So I just, I kind of always wanted them to give him a call and say, in Vince McMahon style, we're calling you up. You're back in the big time. So even if it's just like a quick flashback, let the guy wear the suit and, he
looks great in the suit. I would like to see that happen for him as well. I really would. Doesn't look like it, but I would like to see it happen.
The one I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. You.
I was going to say Lando. I think that's going to be the real sleeper hit. I think, like I was saying with Han Solo is the fun heart of Star Wars. I think Lando is too. I think they're two peas in a pod. They're clones. They're cut from the same cloth. Scoundrels. I never read that Scoundrels book. Did you?
No, I didn't. But
I just wanted to, just because it's Han and Lando.
I've heard it's fun. I've heard that it's fun. So yeah, it's more of that. The camaraderie between those two. The Lando one is a head scratcher because there's no detail on this thing. I mean, no detail, and there's no talk of Donald Glover. There's no talk of Billy D. Williams. Do
you think that they? It's such a negative, depiction of Disney and Lucasfilm. But do you think they're sitting there going, "Man, we got that one really right. we've got to fix this. Get rid of that Donald Glover guy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, what do they say? Snatching defeat from the jaws of victory.
Yeah, exactly.
Is kind of what they want to do. There's too much love for this Lando guy. I wonder about Lando because I want Lando to be a playboy. I want him to be a scoundrel. I want him to use them and lose them. I mean, that's the character, and that's of course going to be very out of fashion with modern day sensibilities. I hope that the character gets to warts and all. I mean, that's the thing, is what kind of characters are we going to have if they're not flawed, if they're not allowed to have flaws? What kind of stories are we going to be able to tell?
And Mandalorian is doing that. I went in so cautious with Mandalorian. I remember speaking to you last time, and you were saying, well, there's this show coming out, it's Mandalorian. And I was like, yeah, okay. You'll see. And you didn't see. I saw. I guess we both saw. Like, this thing is free of wokeness, of all this political correctness, and this just really fake forced, appropriateness, and this fake tact. And it just, it doesn't feel right. It feels motivated by the wrong reasons. So the fact that Mandalorian can do that and be totally free of all of these things that don't work in entertainment. Right. I have hope that all of the new Star Wars shows will be like that as well. Now, realistically, will they? No, they won't all be like that. And maybe even most of them won't be like that. But I have hope that, at least one or two you'll be able to watch it and go, was this made in 83 and George buried it somewhere in the California desert, buried it in the Desto, and here you go. I shot this a long time ago. Lando show. Maybe that's why we don't know anything about Lando. He shot it in 86.
This will break your heart maybe a little bit, because it just reminded me of a story that I had heard, and I can't name the source, but someone that did some effects work. JJ worked with a lot of boutique special effects companies on episode 7. ILM, of course, was highly involved, but there were some smaller jobs that were handed out to some of the smaller companies. And JJ came and presented and talked to the small group of designers that was going to be working. And he said, I need you to think that you just took the VHS of Return of the Jedi out of the player. And it was it's not only is it just a VCR, it's a top loader VCR. It's the kind that you rented from the grocery store or whatever. And now you're putting in episode 7. Yes. And you play it. That was what he was painting in their minds. Yeah. I think to some extent they pulled that off. I mean, I'll never forget, looking at Jakku with, the downed, AT-AT and Rey living in there, and just seeing the remnants of war all around. I thought that was and still is stunning, and it was like, wow, I'm back in that galaxy. Holy cow. It kind of went off the rails, and we never got to see any classic aliens. Everything was fleshy and normal skin toned, or earth skin tones. There wasn't really any much boldness with character design, but they got some things right. I would say that with the future of Star Wars, I never really wanted Star Wars to be a universe like the DC universe or the Marvel universe. To me, it was always, as I said, about big questions, big stories, mythology, and sort of a single canon. But that's not what Star Wars has evolved into, and that's okay. And I'm having fun. I think it's going to be different flavors of ice cream, and I prefer the flavor of the Mandalorian, and hopefully the other shows that Favreau and Filoni have coming. We've got Book of Boba Fett. We have Rangers of the New Republic, which I got the first action figure of Rangers of the New Republic here, but apparently, it looks like maybe that's not going to happen. I'm a little skeptical about some of those rumors that it was a vehicle for her or her character. Some of that I think is a little bit of creative
Luke's got some good advice here.
Storytelling.
Actors just need to stay away from social media.
Yeah, I kind of feel like we all do in a way.
Or just
in a
watch what you
sense.
say.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not a place, on a platform that, sort of made its, when a platform comes on the scene and what makes it unique is that you have to limit yourself by a number of characters.
Right.
Let's not use that to try to have nuanced conversation or conversation about complex, controversial issues. The oversimplification of these kinds of things is going to be our undoing. The creating the straw man to attack people and their positions, and just oversimplifying it and turning people into cartoons. It's just, I've had enough of it. But nonetheless, I did just get this actually in the mail today. It has really nothing to do with anything.
It's a cool figure. It's a cool character.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's just a shame because the fans at the end, the fans lose. So
I mean,
whichever side you're on it.
I don't know much about that whole thing, but I had heard about it as it went on, and I didn't see any evidence of her doing something absolutely reprehensible and appalling. I think it was just, needling for a long time.
Sure.
People who were very needleable, very sensitive. And it just it reached a breaking point at one point. But I agree with you 100% about especially Twitter, but all forms of texted social media where it's just too short. You need to be able to put a voice, put a tone, put facial expressions, volume. You need to put all this stuff with what you're saying, because when you just text it out, I mean, Gina Carano is a perfect example. When you just write it out there, the problem is that people are reading it sometimes in their own voice.
Sure.
And I've gotten emails where it sounded like they were angry and they weren't. I was angry reading it because I was like, well, this is a bunch of BS. But you've got to be able to say it and speak it, because I'll use The Rock as an example. He's got this new show, the Young Rock Show. And in it, he admits that when he was younger, he shoplifted. He stole a lot of expensive clothes because he was poor and he wanted to look rich for the girls.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because he's sitting there and cameras are all over him and he's lit professionally, he's in a studio, it's professionally cut, edited by NBC. He can sit there and joke around about being, a thief, stealing things, and it doesn't become a huge scandal. If he had tweeted that out, I used to steal pants. I shoplifted a lot when I was a kid, and just that, cancel rock, right? Or the beginnings of the cancel rock movement. Like, how dare you, you thief, and you're terrible. But in context, and people still do that, right? They'll quote you out of context. But usually it's really good when, a scandalous thing is quoted and then someone says, oh, that's a piece of a very big story that has visuals to it. So someone else will do the work, research, and go, but here's the prequel to that statement, and here's the sequel to that statement. And then it seems like more often than not, it just kind of fades away. It's like, oh, they're just taking a piece. When it's the only thing, the only tweet, that's when it's devastating. And these celebrities need to stay off, stop tweeting one thing. If it's that type of topic where, hey, you can believe whatever you want to believe, but be respectful of differing opinions. And that's why I don't go and tweet and say, this was the biggest flaming pile of garbage I've ever seen, and I turned it off after 20 minutes, and you're in, and insult people who think differently. You can't do that. You just can't. And if you do it, if you do it in a video, maybe like a more jovial tone will reveal, like it's really not worth getting worked up. I'm not upset about it, so please don't you be upset about it either.
Yeah, you're the $1 million word is context and intent, a lot of times too.
Hey, we talked a lot about Star Wars. I want to talk to you about James Bond for just a minute. I don't know how much time you have left here, but I know you're a huge Bond fan, and you've got. Are you still doing the Bond cast?
That's sort of that's our vanity project. It's like, yeah, no, we do. We've done with our good friend Jonathan Wilkins, who was works for Titan magazines over in the UK, and he was the editor of Star Wars Insider for a long time, and we just became really, really good friends with him. And he lives over in the UK, and we thought, well, if we're ever going to do True Confession, we may have drank an entire bottle of whiskey one night between the three of us at a Star Wars celebration, just talking nothing but James Bond. It was funny because, people would see Jimmy Mack and I over at a table and, engrossed in conversation with this other, with Jonathan. And they're like, wow, Rebel Force Radio and the editor of Star Wars Insider, they must be having this engrossing Star Wars conversation. And the look of disappointment when they would come over and we're talking about, but GoldenEye is definitely his best. Are you? So that sort of begat Bondcast. And our next one, we're going to record. Actually, I think this weekend we're going to do A View to a Kill. So we're up to Roger's Swan Song.
Yeah, my Bond. That was the first Bond I ever saw in the theater. It might have been View to a Kill. It might have been the first movie I saw, or maybe the one before that. But Roger Moore was the first Bond I ever saw. So years later, when I heard about this Sean Connery, I was one of the few people on the planet going, "He's not James Bond. Who's this pretender to the throne?"
Yeah, I was in the exact same boat. My introduction to Bond was the Duran Duran video for A View to a Kill.
Same here, yeah.
And like, wow, this is really cool. And then, as dumb as it sounds, I think they did a couple of Bond parodies on Muppet Babies and things like that. As a kid, I would watch, and I was aware of the Ultimate Secret Agent, and Roger Moore was the face. And then my cousin, again, he had HBO, and that was a big deal. And he called me up and said, "Hey, there's a James Bond movie on this afternoon if you want to come over and see it." And it was Never Say Never Again. So not only was it not Roger Moore, it was Sean Connery in the the non-Eon, sort
loophole.
of the loophole. Yeah,
the loophole movie.
Yeah.
What do you mean we're remaking a movie I just made?
And then they showed him a picture of Kim. Yeah, right. Then they showed him a picture of Kim Basinger and the salary that he was going to get.
You know what? You don't have to pay me much then.
That's very good. That's very good.
Thank you.
So yeah, that was, but then, then it became a tradition where we would rent the VCR on the weekends, and my mom would bring home a couple of Bond movies, and I would go through them. And then we eventually got cable, and TBS would do these great marathons, and I was just absolutely hooked. So yeah, I would say next to Star Wars, I would say Bond is probably my greatest love as far as franchises go.
I need to watch another Bond movie. What would you recommend? What's your favorite Bond movie?
Well, I think Daniel Craig's first one. I think that Casino Royale is a masterpiece. I think it's I think it's a masterpiece film. I think it's up there with, in terms of Bond, it's up there with Dr. No and Goldfinger and Thunderball. I mean, just the classics. I think my two favorite of all time are Casino Royale and Dr. No.
Dr. No. It's almost, James Bond is very similar to Star Wars. There's your vintage brand, and then there's your modern brand, and it has kind of morphed into a different thing. So, when I ask people like, who's your favorite Bond, I almost feel like I should say, okay, who's your classic favorite Bond and who's your contemporary favorite Bond?
Yeah. I think there's something to enjoy about all of them. I mean, I'm one of those, I know it's one of those weirdos that likes On Her Majesty's Secret Service, but I really do. And I think that George Lazenby is very likable. I think he's probably the most approachable Bond, in terms of, I think he seems like a real guy that you could know and would seem very affable, but you don't realize that, he's also a lethal weapon underneath, the turtleneck.
Yeah.
Whatever else he was wearing.
You want to throw some shade here? Who's the worst Bond? I don't know if there's a bad one. There's definitely ones who aren't as good as, the best. but
Right. That's for sure. I have to say,
maybe least memorable, you could say.
I would say that the Pierce films have aged the worst,
Oh,
with the exception of GoldenEye.
Yeah.
But those, and it's not. And what's odd is that Pierce Brosnan was, like, in a lot of ways, the quintessential actor to play Bond. He had been promised the role a couple of times, and finally he got it. I think they lifted him off with a great one, and then the ones that came after, and then, you know, by the time they got to Die Another Day, it was just brutal.
Who do you want to see take over after Daniel Craig? Gina Carano? She's free? She's free.
Can you imagine? Well, I would certainly prefer for James Bond to remain a male character. Who would I like? I think Henry Cavill would be great.
Oh, good one.
I think he would be fantastic.
What do you think about Idris Elba? His name has been thrown around a lot.
Yeah, he's very, very, very classy guy.
Yeah.
I'd be you know what? I didn't think I was going to love Daniel Craig, and I ended up really, really liking Daniel Craig.
I think he's the closest to Connery. I mean, everyone else, Daniel Craig. I think everyone
Daniel Craig, sure.
Everyone else is doing a Roger Moore impression, and Daniel Craig comes in going, I'm gonna do that Sean guy. You know, like, call me crazy, but I'm gonna try to kind of capture Sean's Bondness.
Yeah, and you know, when you read the books, the character is very dark. He is. I don't know that you would want to hang out with him. Like, I don't know that Bond is supposed to be a guy that you would just like to pal around with. You know, there's a certain numbing out that you have to do. I think Craig really captures that. And again, one of the reasons why I love Casino Royale so much is because you see the moment when he turns sort of the humanity off, because he can't. Now, the problem I have with all the Craig films, honestly, is that he's never, you know, the thing that was so great about the Bond and the Connery and the Roger films is that you're plopped down in the middle of this world where James Bond exists, and he goes in and gets his mission from M, and he goes off and he has the mission, and then he, you know, meets the girl, and then at the end he does something kind of embarrassing or cutesy or whatever. There was a formula, but Bond was always very much, he was in. He wasn't going anywhere. Craig his Bond always has one foot out the door. And so he's always, every Bond movie with Craig, he's always coming back, or he's never just in. So I'm hoping that, well, I guess, we know the premise of the new one, and he's retired. So we've never had that where it's just, he walks in, gets his mission from M, goes off on his mission. Yeah. That's been my disappointment.
He's never been all in. So
all in. Exactly.
Yeah. Who'd you like to see take over after Daniel hangs it up?
Yeah, I think Henry Cavill. I also think that the other guy that comes to mind is Tom Hardy. I know that he's
he can do anything.
I think the Vegas odds are pretty high on him right now, taking the place. You mentioned Idris. My only problem with Idris is I feel that he's a little too old now, because I don't want them to invest, because these movies are not like they used to be, where they would come out, you know, my God, I think that in the early days with Connery, they would come out one a year. They were really churning those out, maybe every 18 months. And now, you know, they're looking at 2-3 years in between. And I just think you probably would only get Idris in for a couple. Yeah, that's if that.
I think you know, I'd love to see Ewan McGregor. Everything comes back to Star Wars. I would have loved to see Ewan McGregor as James Bond, and I guess they say too old. If Idris is too old, then I guess
Ewan has somehow, he's got the Fountain of Youth thing going on. I still think he looks like a kid when I see him on
he's
on
got
talk
the youthful
shows and stuff.
exuberance and stuff. You know, he's really got that youthfulness about him. But I'd love to see him as a Bond, because I think, you know, if I feel like Craig is capturing, he doesn't look and he doesn't necessarily act like Connery, but when I see Craig, I'm like, that's what Connery, that's the aura Connery had about him. I see
Yeah.
Ewan McGregor and I go, that's Roger Moore right there. Like that'd be your Roger Moore, constantly
Yeah.
fixing his cufflinks type of James Bond and cocking the eyebrow and bringing like the class,
Have you ever seen the movie Down with Love with
Yes.
Ewan McGregor?
Yes.
I love that era. I mean, I'm a total nut for the 1960s, the Mad Men, Rat Pack, all that stuff. And so that movie, which was sort of like the the sort of a parody in a way of the rom-coms of the 1960s is great. And you get to see that if you're watching this and you want to know what a Ewan McGregor take on James Bond might be like, you get a little glimpse of it, I think, in that film.
It's been a long time since I saw that one, but I need to, sometimes I pick an actor and I go on a binge, watch a whole bunch of Jeff Bridges or watch a whole bunch of this guy or that guy. Ewan McGregor, I've started to actually do that. I watched the movie he directed a couple of years ago, and Last Days in the Desert was great too. He's just done so many great movies. Jake brings up a good point here. So this is Tom Hardy. He's played Picard, or a clone of Picard in Star Trek Nemesis. He played Mad Max, possibly James Bond now. And in Inception, I think Tom Hardy is playing James Bond in Inception. Darling, like
I haven't seen that movie. I have not seen. I know. It's a
wild.
sin.
Yeah,
I have not seen it.
Well, the circumstances have to be perfect. Like you have to be awake, aware, uninterrupted. It's really a puzzle. Like it's a chess game, and when it's done, it's incredibly satisfying. It's like, how does the human mind weave all this into a multi-million-dollar movie and make this actually work and make sense by the end of it? But he's fantastic in that, and he's being Tom Hardy, but like Jack muscle Tom Hardy, and
right.
You have to dare to dream a little bigger, darling. Like he's tough, but he's classy. He's pure Bond in that. But this comment by Jake makes me wonder: is Tom Hardy the Disney of actors? Is he quietly, slowly acquiring all iconic characters?
All the franchises.
Is he going to be Vader? Are we going to see Tom Hardy, as remake Bridge Over River Kwai and Gone with the Wind?
He does seem to, he's a hot commodity, and he's one of those. I have to say, that oh gosh, his name just Johnny Depp is one of those where I learned to stop questioning Johnny Depp being cast in things. Like you would hear that Johnny Depp, like, I'm a big musical theater nut, and I remember he was cast as Sweeney Todd, and I'm like, oh geez, Johnny Depp and Sweeney Todd. No, Sweeney Todd. And then damn if he wasn't fantastic. Everything that he does, I feel, is great. As far as his performance goes. So Tom Hardy's getting to be one of those actors where I just have to stop going, oh, really, Tom Hardy? And just go, oh, Tom Hardy will be great because he's great in everything.
Yeah, he's fantastic. Tom Hardy could play Idris Elba in the Idris Elba story, and
no one would complain.
They're like, he was fantastic.
Well, it was Tom Hardy, of course.
But this has been a blast, Jason. I think we'll wrap it up now. We're at an hour and a half here, and I just want to thank you for making the time, because I know you're busy with the podcast and with.
I could talk to you for 3 hours. You're one of those. You're one of those guys. We didn't even get to talk about toys, and I'll just share one.
Well, let's talk about toys then.
So I just started because I'm getting very. So I've never had a Voltron, and I was always jealous of my friends in school, and they had a Voltron. Now this is the Super 7 Ultimates version, so it's really just an action figure. He doesn't come apart, but you've really inspired me to branch out beyond just collecting Star Wars stuff and
garnish.
Yes, exactly. And this is the most indulgent thing that I've done in a while. I got this Inspector Gadget.
Oh, cool.
From a company, Blitzway Toys. This thing is amazing. This is like the accessories it comes with is insane. There's got to be 50 different parts and different hands, heads, neck extensions, leg extensions. But I think the one thing that I've learned from watching you is, and forgive me if I misquote you, but when you start, if I felt like there's been a bit of an evolution, you were very much a purist in terms of vintage, and then you started opening your heart a little bit to the modern vintage takes, and you call it unfinished business. That's your term, and that's sort of what's guided me along. And it's almost like if it gives you a feeling, if it gives you that time machine feeling, and you always say time travel's possible if you work hard enough, right? And so every once in a while I'll see something and there's doesn't seem to be any pattern to it. But when I saw the Voltron and I saw this Inspector Gadget, I was like, I gotta have that because it just felt really good.
Luke's asking where you got that Inspector Gadget. And that thing looks amazing. I remember watching the cartoon before going to school and wanting that toy that didn't exist so bad. I'm like, make an Inspector Gadget with all the crazy gimmicks.
Yeah, I know. They did one from, I think it was Ideal or Coleco, one of those brands. And I had it. I think I burned a hole in the Sears catalog staring at it for days on end.
You should have been wearing ruby quartz sunglasses.
But no, that's a whole set. In fact, here, I'll just show real quick. Now the Gadget figure is super articulated and comes with a ton of accessories, but they did put together some of the other cast. So you got cool. Chief Quimby here in the trash can, and he comes out of the trash can. You can put legs on him and stuff, so you can give him a sort of different looks. And then there's Brain, and I don't have his accessory pack in front of me, but you can put the sombrero and the mustache on him, like when he's in disguise, you know. And then Penny with she does have legs. It's the green screen, the green screen. And the little computer book. But so yeah, I had to get that. You can it's an import. It's Japanese import. I just bought it direct from Blitzway Toys, but there are some of the e-tailers online have it. But that was a show that was really special to me as a kid. So, and Voltron was too, but I, grew up, we didn't have a whole lot of money. And so I think I had one or two of the pilot figures and, but never got the big die cast. I remember the kids coming and showing that for show and tell in school, and just me being so envious of it. But
there goes my wallet, says Luke. Right there.
Anyway, I had to get I know you wanted to wrap it up, but I had to get those in there because I had them sitting out, and I'm like, one of the only people in the radius of my life that would care about these at all is Michael Mercy. So
not how about Jimmy Mack? He's a big that mostly just Star Wars though. He's a Star Wars.
Yeah, collector. You know what, Michael? He's a 70s kid, where you and I are like our 80s kids. So he was in.
Does he look at 32 points of articulation? And go, why do you need all that? He's turning into an old Jewish guy now. Oh, why do you need all that articulate? I don't have 32 points of articulation.
I feel like you've heard these conversations with him.
Well, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he is. Yeah, he doesn't want to give up sculpting for the articulation, and I kind of agree with that. But I have to say I do enjoy seeing you review. I love the histories that you do on G.I. Joe and the new ones you're doing on Masters of the Universes are just awesome. But I get excited when you get a new toy that's based on an old property, and you're always very fair, and I like you sort of point out, and it's always from the perspective of somebody that might have had the original and they're comparing it to the new stuff. But I like to see you getting into that.
Appreciate that. And I'm lucky. I'm so lucky and blessed that, I get these gift boxes, from good brothers like Chris Miwa is there and saw Micah in there previously, and Gojitron. Mark, sorry for anyone I've forgotten. Adam Hurd has sent some amazing gift boxes. And I'll review these things, and honestly, my reaction to it is whether I went and bought it or whether it was a gift. I just love toys. So if anyone wonders how easy would you go on a horrible toy that you paid for, though, it's coming. So you being part of the Patreon tribe, it's coming. The Greenlight 1/18 scale Fall Guy truck. I paid for that. And man, did I pay for that. That I'm going to call that a beautiful disaster piece. That I've never done a restoration job on a brand new out of the box toy. It turned into a restoration video. And it's not like it got hit with a doth the road elbow, baby. It's brand new, like in a nice secure clamshell. The box was fine. There's no damage or anything. I open it and pieces are falling out. And as I'm just, looking at it sideways, that was my problem. I should have looked at it dead on instead of sideways. Like things are falling off. And I laughed throughout the whole review. Like it could have been very disappointing, but it was the funniest video I've done ever, because I couldn't stop laughing at everything that went wrong. And the way I kind of explained it was, that's Colt's truck. I mean, that's Colt Seavers. Colt Seavers stands there and his arm falls off, right? The unknown stuntman. I'm like, well, like stuntman, like truck, so
yeah. After
I was done that, I was
apropos.
After about a half hour of futzing and fixing, gluing this truck back together, I thought this has been a really fun experience. And there's two ways to go. There's, being angry and saying this is a ripoff, what a waste of money, I can't believe they do this. Or there's the other way to go. And I'm glad I just naturally don't even have to work at doing that anymore. I just naturally went in the fun direction and went, yeah, it kind of makes sense that Colt's truck was just going to implode. So that's a fun
one thing I wanted to ask you before we go. There was Big Joe news with the Lady J TV series that was announced.
Yeah.
And have you? I haven't seen any I was waiting for the Michael. I don't want to spill. Have you spill anything here? If you were going to do some sort of video on the news, but what are your thoughts about live action Joe TV series Lady J?
Yeah, I just heard about that today and forgot about it, but thanks for the reminder. I wasn't planning on doing a video because I don't normally do sit down. We have something to talk about, folks. It's because my answer is the same for everything. For every reboot and new thing, I'm cautiously optimistic. A Lady J show, I know why they're doing a Lady J show. And to me, it's a head scratcher. There's, 57,000 male Joes, and there's 4 female Joes or 5 female Joes. It's like, why do a Lady J show? And okay, even if the edict was, we must do a female G.I. Joe show, how about a Scarlet show? Why not a Scarlet show? Or maybe because they can't, because Scarlet's in the Snake Eyes movie. I don't know. But, I
thought that a Baroness would have been an interesting character to sort of use her as an anchor and then create the Joe universe around her. Could have been interesting if they wanted to go that route. But Lady J is a very odd one.
My thoughts on a Lady J show are the same as my thoughts on a Chuckles show or a Flint show or a Topside show. I'm looking at some of the guys behind me here, a Psych Out show, a Bazooka show. I want a G.I. Joe show. I don't want a Hawk show, a Duke show, even my favorites. I don't want a Snake Eyes show. I want a G.I. Joe show. And once again, I'm good. I got Renegades, and I love the original Joe show, but then I got something new, which was spectacular, called G.I. Joe Renegades. It was basically a mashup of A-Team and G.I. Joe, where Joe is on the run for a crime they didn't commit. And it's not a Duke show. It's not a Tunnel Rat show. It's a G.I. Joe show. So tough act to follow, even though that was animated and this is live action. Tough act to follow, and it just kind of smells to me of that modern wokeness. Where why are they picking Lady J? Please prove me wrong, and if I'm proven wrong, then I'll go, whoop, I made a mistake. This thing is awesome. Just like Mandalorian, I was wrong about that. Man, was I ever wrong about that. That Mandalorian provided one of the most special, beautiful Star Wars moments ever. I mean, I always went back to Vader saving Luke as the one that always hits me in the heart, always hits me in the feels, picks the Emperor up and saves his son. And I'm like, I'm verklempt, and now Mandalorian has topped that. That Luke moment, it just obliterates me, where's the tissue box? It's just so powerful and special. And I watched it over and over again that night. And I'm like, this is the real deal. I don't think this is going to get boring in a year or two. This is actually the real deal. Yep. A Lady J show, there's this team. Like, once again, we go back to that. How do you not put the OT crew together, in a story? You got all of G.I. Joe. They're just off to the side there. You got the whole team and you just want to focus on one. It's like, don't, put a team together, focus on a team, do Slaughter's Renegades or something. I don't care. Put Lady J and Scarlet and Flint and Beachhead and Roadblock on a team, just like with Renegades, and do an ensemble thing. Joe has never been about the one individual. That's Rambo. Joe is about the brotherhood and the sisterhood.
Yeah, I wonder if they might be taking a Marvel kind of tact where they're going to, have establish these characters. So they've got the Snake Eyes film, right. And now we're gonna, so that you might have these big, because that seems to be where these studios are headed. They want the multimedia and also the convergence of it all happening over streaming. Seems to make it maybe more possible. But I'm with you. The first thing I was like, oh, I know what that smells like. As soon as they said Lady J, but since I was a kid, I'm just dying for a good live action Joe. Like, why do they make it so hard? Like you said, it's all there right behind Michael right now. It's all there.
The costumes have been designed.
Get out of the way. Yeah, right.
Hector Garrido has great real life representations of the costumes. Maybe the figures don't actually, look live action, but the Hector Garrido art on the cards looks fantastic. Hello, sweetie.
Uh-oh.
No, we're still live.
I'm interrupting family time. Now that is the gorgeous that you acknowledge at the beginning, at the tops of your videos.
One of them.
Oh, okay. That's great. I'm sorry, man. I know you wanted to jump a while ago.
I didn't want to keep you because I know you've got the family and
I do have to put the kids to bed and.
But just what you were saying about the crossover thing, I wanted to wrap that up with the crossover thing and we kind of smelled it. From DC when they were like, "Ooh, we've got to get in on that crossover thing. Let's make this quick, wham bam, ready-made Justice League," and it didn't work. You can't force it; it needs to be very organic. Right. If that is, and this is speculation, fun speculation. If that is what they're trying to do, Hasbro, I'm guessing, is in charge of all this stuff. Let's do a crossover, and we'll cross over Lady J with Snake Eyes, with Chuckles. We got to get a Chuckles show if they're going to do individual shows. And I'm thinking, wait a second, that's not exciting to me. Lady J crossing paths with Snake Eyes, I don't care. That's not a crossover moment like Iron Man crossing over with Captain America and Thor was. Why don't you do Mask? Where's Mask? Mask it's right here in my hand, but I wish it was in the hand of some folks at Hasbro. Why don't you do a Joe show and then a Mask show or Mask movie? And then why don't you do, that could be it, but do some more of those good Transformers movies. The last one was really good, Bumblebee. Why don't you cross that stuff over? And there's your mega mind-blowing crossover event, Mask, Transformers, G.I. Joe. Put those three together.
The Hasbro-verse.
And we're going to see some of the channel members with custom emojis, Spectrum Mask, Spectrum on. They're going to show it there. But you've got something so much bigger. Once again, everything goes back to wrestling and Star Wars, just like making the sequel trilogy.
Always.
But
can we write that book together? You and me, we'll write the book called Everything Goes Back to Wrestling and Star Wars.
I think when we get really old and sound very Jewish. Hey, remember that book we talked about back in 2021? Oy vey. I don't remember what I had for lunch. Jason, it's breakfast.
What?
What? But that's like the big mind-blowing crossover that I'd like to see. They're going down a different path. I don't know. It seems like, going back to the Star Wars movie, like you've got this big team up you could do. No, we're doing Poe and Rey and Finn. Like, okay, maybe in 30 years that'll be a mind-blowing thing to put them together, but right now I'd rather see Lando and Leia and Luke and Han and Chewie.
Yeah, give it to characters that have earned the moment. You know, I remember when they did the JJ Star Trek films, and they decided to try to give us that big death scene of Kirk in the second one. Well, the reason that it's so impactful in Wrath of Khan, first of all, you have the amazing chemistry of those original actors, but the reason it's so impactful is because you had lived with those characters for 20 some years by the time that happens. We've known Kirk and Spock in this incarnation for a year and a half, whatever it was. They didn't earn it. So yeah, right. I'm with you. Those big moments have to be earned.
Yeah, absolutely agree on you with that. Jason, we got to talk again very soon.
Let's do it. Let's do it. And you know what? Look
at that. 2 hours has flown by. Wow.
It's crazy. I tell you, you do have that effect. I put you on a lot. Sometimes just put a playlist on just to kind of have in the background. Cause I always, I don't know, there's something comforting and just joyful about what you do. And I really enjoy it. So
thank you, good brother. You as
good
well.
Man.
You as well. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And you as well. I guess to some extent, your partner there, Jimmy Mack. Jimmy, I love you. You know, he's one of those intangible guys, not literal guys. He knows I'm joking.
Oh my gosh, of course, of course. But I would love to keep the crossover. I think we've earned the crossover and get you on RFR at some point and break down some of your favorite Star Wars moments and characters and put you through the Yoda questionnaire.
Oh, that would be.
I'd like to hear Michael Mercy's Yoda questionnaire.
That would be fun, and but only if I get to sound like an old Jewish guy. Hey,
okay, yeah. So Watto, is that what you're thinking?
And it would be awesome to speak to Puppet Lando, because Puppet Lando is one of my favorite parts.
Oh man, Puppet Lando, yeah, mine too.
Oh, that'd be a blast. Thank you, Luke, very much. Thank you, everyone in the comments there. Thanks for chatting along with us. Jason, thank you so much, not just for chatting tonight and for chatting the last time, but thank you for Rebel Force Radio and the Force Cast before that. It has been such a joy to listen to, and everything you said about me, right back at you, brother. Thank you for being the light during the dark times and the light during the light times, the bright times.
Yeah, we got a lot of after shows and a lot of reaction shows. It's gonna be busy times.
Thank you for always keeping it fun and always reminding us that Star Wars is fun and Star Wars has heart. And I just appreciate that you guys always, you know, you take it seriously, but you also have fun with it, which is what Star Wars was. It was serious and fun. It was that impossible mix of the two. And I think your podcast captures that. And that's why it's been around and will be around for many years to come, because it's tapped into the same force that Star Wars, at least, you know, 80s Star Wars and maybe Rebels and definitely Mandalorian and, you know, maybe Solo. There's a lot of exceptions to all new Star Wars sucks.
Yeah, only Sith stealing absolutes, right?
Absolutely. But yeah, it's been a blast, and look forward to chatting with you some more.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining the chat. And till next time, Nerdmas Day, and may the Force be with you.
Take care.